Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Safranis, and today I'm on with Ayushi Agarwal. Ayushi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, great to be here. Thanks, Alex, for inviting me. I'm Ayushi Agarwal. I am a data analyst at Salesforce. I have been in the data and analytics space for the past 5 to 6 years, I would say, because that's where I did my graduate studies, my undergrad, and I'm very much working in the marketing data analytics space for the past 3 years. So, very excited to be here and chat with Alex.
Yeah, and we actually did chat once before, so you can go back and see our previous episode if you're interested. And in this episode, I want to ask you sort of relevant questions as I'm thinking through the future of marketing technology. I just want to make sure I understand how it works and also get your perspective being part of such a industry leading company. Can you walk us through just the different kinds of database structures that there are, just at a high level? What kinds of databases are there that you can use in your business? Um, let's just start there.
Yeah, for sure. There are different databases that different companies are utilizing. When it comes to the software solutions, they are using things like Snowflake for the data warehousing solutions. They have Google BigQuery that has come up with their own ML solutions as well. All the different software vendors, Oracle, they all have their database solutions. The structures are very similar. It depends on the platform that you are trying to use or your company is using. I see a lot of data migration happening across the board within different companies as well. So we also were going through a migration very recently, and there are layers to data structures that I would say. Um, One of the biggest things that I see is the data is very disparate. That means like things are coming from GA, things are coming from in-house softwares. For example, for Salesforce, it would be Salesforce data. For Google, it would be Google data and in-house solutions that the companies have, and how we bring together all the data and form different models on top of it and do all the data pre-processing. Um, that's where the interest lies for many data analysts and data scientists to build data on top of it that they can utilize for their analyses.
Before we continue, I have a quick advertisement. This is actually on my own behalf. So I was in a meeting yesterday. I worked for DirecTV, and they were talking about an employee referral program for DirecTV. So if you've been interested in the DirecTV product at all, this is a great time to get it. I know we have a lot of sports. This is a great season. It's getting cold out there in many regions. So this is for the US. You should definitely consider getting DirecTV so you can stay in and watch some great movies. This is the best super aggregation platform that there is. So you can get all of the different TV services, all the movies, everything, even the stuff in theaters. You should get it right on your home screen. So it's an amazing product. It's the best TV product there is. So if you're considering getting it, definitely get it. Send me your information, your email, name, and what product you want to get to my email in the description of this podcast. And we'll hook you up with up to a $400 gift card when you sign up. Thank you for listening, and back to the podcast. What are the different categories of ML models that you would want to build on your database? You could have forecasting models, any demand models, financial models. Um, Maybe you have an audience first party segmentation to see how your customers are similar in different aspects. Are there any others you can think of? Can you walk us through more about like how those models are built on that data?
Yeah, for sure. I think it differs from use case to use case. For example, we in marketing really care about the customer and how we can support the sales teams, because sales and marketing in conjunction have to work very closely to, for example, close a deal or get more pipe. right? So some of the models that we do are audience segmentation that we've seen, forecasting, you're right. There are also models like pipe to spend efficiency that determine the efficiency. Some are probabilistic models that determine the probability of generating an opportunity with a particular account or things like that. There
Oh,
are.
lead scoring.
Yes, yes. Lead scoring is a big one. Lead scoring is also very tricky because it needs to be continuously run on a definite cadence, because your leads need to be scored for quality and they need to be continuously updated. And there are like different things that come into lead scoring. One is your in-house data, like you said. That is very important, but also the data that is available outside, the external factors. For example, what's the size of the company from the where the lead is coming from, what are the different types of softwares that they are using. These are all called intent features that determine probability of lead converting into an opportunity or a contact associated with an opportunity. So that's really important. So yes, we do utilize lead scoring models heavily. And yeah, it's very interesting. And with the advent of AI, this is also getting into the analytics space and not just ML space. It's building models is one thing, but how these models are responding to plain English questions and how fast they are responding to our plain English questions is, or in a specific language question, is very important. For example, I've built a probabilistic model, but the end user is going to be a marketer who are not very technical in their understanding. They are going to ask like, okay, what is the how can I close n number of accounts in X region? This would be their question. And the model has to understand, the backend has to understand what they're asking, fetch the right output from a particular model and output that to the end user in the most simple way possible, so that they can go back and take the necessary actions. So that's super interesting. That's what I think is very latest in data and analytics space. It's become very conversational. From before it was very I would say transactional, but now it's very conversational, and it's people are expecting more and more each day.
Interesting. Can you tell us more about how those models work for identifying intent? You mentioned install data. So what that would be is like if you're trying to sell Microsoft Word to somebody and they have Apple Pages installed on their computer, they're a little bit less likely to download Microsoft Word. You might have to work a little harder. Is that what you mean? And are you using, like, what are the different kinds of data that are used besides the ones you mentioned?
Yeah, yes, it's right. Like if they have Microsoft installed, can they use they one thing is that it model can output that they might not use it, but it also depends on their past search. So if there is a way to check clickstream data, for example, like which were the ads that they have seen, or third party data, for example, if we get third party data for a particular user or a particular company or things like that, and also like how they have interacted in the past with your own products. Have they clicked on some, have they attended some campaigns, have they downloaded any white papers, have they interacted with your website before, what were they looking for before, right? So like the GA data is also really important. And also um, the interactions, like we cannot exclude the calls or the interactions that they have had in person or over email with your sales teams, for example. That's also really important. It also is very important to see what current installations do they have. Like you said, they have Microsoft but they do not have Apple, or vice versa. So it's very important to see what they have, what they are interested in, and what how far they can go within their current capacity. So where that's where the size of a company comes in. Like, okay, does this company have the resources that we need to implement our software solution, for example. So like all these factors together play a huge role, I feel, in the models that are out there. And the models have to continuously relearn, retrain themselves to be the best probabilistic model or an ML model for that matter.
So is that the difference between standard models that we've done for the last decade and the new models that have like AI, is the difference that they're kind of self-learning models where they have that feedback loop and they improve, and that's what makes them this next level of model, or is there some other innovation that they're experiencing?
I think it's both. I won't say that the models previously were not taking a lot of it into account, but I would say that our conversations on there is a lot of data that's been generated in the past decade, like you said. Um, the technology has advanced, and I would say that there is so much that has happened over the past decade in terms of conversations and in terms of development, and all this was being trained all these years. It did not happen just overnight. It's the outcome of the data that we generated or outcome of the technology that was being created in the past, and it was just like learning, relearning, refining, and I think it's just going to get better. For example, when ChatGPT was launched, it was it was like just a conversational tool, but now we have AI building clicking your photographs, AI doing voiceovers. If like we are recording this podcast right now, they can train on my voice, and some AI bot can speak exactly the way I am talking. So it's like constantly learning and relearning and building on top of solutions that already previously existed. So I would say like the foundation was laid, and then we just continuously like built on top of something, and the foundation was strong. That's why the technology that we came up with is so good. That's my understanding.
I love that. So you seem to be interested in AI. I'm curious what you think the next stage in AI will be. How do you see it evolving from here?
I feel there's a lot of information available right now. I think every company is dipping their toes very deeply into AI since the end of last year. I think this past year, AI has been the word of any tech conference, any strategy behind any business decisions, any organizational changes, anything across the board in every big company or small company. There are tech startups that are spinning up every day. I think what I would see is a lot of knowledge, influx of knowledge around AI. There might be some I see that there are also some talks of regulations being laid around AI. There are, like, for example, it's a bit off track in terms of topic, but it's very relevant. Like, for example, there are artists who are saying that our voices are being trained on AI, and there are some copyright issues. So I feel like there will be a lot of disruption in a good way, because there will be probably some rules around it or things like that. Or but I see a lot happening. I see like uh, things would be much easier with technology being so advanced. Our day-to-days would definitely change, and it would creep up in our everyday life, just like any other technology you can say did. Like, for example, robo vacuums were not very ubiquitous like 10 years or 15 years, but now every house has them, right? Like, you do not imagine yourself without a robo vacuum sometimes. Or like, for example, 20 years before, you did not imagine yourself without a social media platform. Today you don't imagine yourself without a social media platform, but 20 years ago you did. Like, you did not know what that was. So like, I feel it's going to become very normal, and it's going to come into our lives, and we are going to ease into it very soon, very quickly, and without even realizing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In many ways, we already have. I think that there's a couple of evolutions that AI is going to make. One, there's going to be an AI with a fractional credit system where it can pay people for the content that goes into it that is then queried and output. You can charge people when they query the AI, and that cost can be then divided between the operating cost and the creator. Somebody's going to do that at some point because it's the same model as the social media platforms, and that's why they got more successful. That's how you like encourage people to make it work. You have to give some of the money away. So I think that's gonna happen, but there's going to be a lot of lawsuits before then, because and everybody knows that that's like a big gray area right now. And the next evolution will be the next version of the internet, because what they're going to do is basically charge you like pay per use. It's like a pay per use model. Like right now, the internet seems to be free, but it's not. You have to pay in your attention. You pay Google and all these people with your attention. So what if there was like another way to get information? So the other way is just using an AI. So instead of Google, it's just an AI, and it feeds you exactly what you need. It's not a website anymore you're going to. You're just asking whatever question you have, and if it is a website that you need to be rendered, it'll give you that website. But the AI becomes the Google. And you see this already happening because when you ask Google a question, the first thing that comes up is the AI answer. They're already priming us for that. And it obviously makes more sense because when you're searching on the internet, you just are looking to input a query and output data, whatever that data is, whatever kind of information it is. So an AI makes much more sense because it can then distribute credit appropriately to people.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing that I can think of is very positive is that we don't need to go and search across like 10 links to figure out which one is the best link for our answer and what we are looking for. AI would do that for us. So it would save our time probably there. And if there is something that distributes credit, like you said about fractional credits, that would be great for a lot of people and creators who are looking for that validation, because AI is definitely going to make a lot of people's jobs very easier and maybe make things very, very efficient so that we can spend our time more on other things that require more of our brain power. So yeah, definitely it's a very good change. And like you said, there's a lot to learn and implement. It's just very disruptive at the moment because it's very new. Everyone's getting accustomed to it. And in many ways, we already have without even knowing. So, yeah, it's definitely great times to be in.
So it's never been a better time to be a generalist because you have this tool that can sort of do a lot of the disciplinarian work, like basically like all of the hard work is a lot of that is done by the machine. Like we used to like all think if you think about tools, they always used to be physical tools. Like we didn't have like into cerebral tools before. The last one was like writing. It gives us a little bit more bandwidth. But we haven't had a lot of advancements since then. Having a tool that can do thinking for you opens up so much more mental bandwidth. So now instead of one thing, like one example is like I have a podcast, I have AI that runs more than half of the processes to create this podcast. I'd like to make it 90% of the processes if I could, because then I can create multiple podcasts. If my only involvement is the speaking part and an
Yeah.
AI can do all the production, now I can create more podcasts. And that is the same across everybody. You can now do more because you have
Yeah.
something that's doing a lot of the dirty work.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. But I feel like with a lot of efficiency comes a lot of onus on the end users or the recipients of the technology to keep it in check. So the other day, I was listening to something, probably it was like a Wall Street Journal podcast, or don't quote me on this, like it might be something else, like some podcast I was listening to, and they were discussing that AI is not accurate because it's being trained on the data that we are generating. And for example, I do not say 100% of the times things that are fact checked or factually correct. It's my general conversation. I can be saying something that just comes to my mind. It might be correct, might not be correct, but it's trained on what I just said. So the outputs need to be fact checked. We cannot take it word for word. So I feel like with the current with the current consumption and overconsumption, there would be definitely a need of things being checked and validated for accuracy, truthfulness, and also it's already happening with a lot of AI tools. I can't remember which one was this case with, but a lot of the information that it's outputting is not factually correct, and it it and some kid did their homework, they took it to the teacher, and it was completely wrong, and the teacher tried to question the person, like, because she doubted something even though it was wrong. She knew that it was not something that the kid wrote, and the kid blurted out like, oh, I just did it from this particular tool. And like, this is this is what would happen if you are just blindly using some of the technologies that are uh, present out there so easily and are very much available. So like, I feel like with this there would also be definitely a need of some fact checkings or some process around how to best consume it in a way that it's not it's not just you consuming it and not seeing what's right, because there would be a lot of incorrectness flowing around in that case.
I think you're definitely correct for today's day and age, but I think that eventually, hopefully, there will be enough development in the AI, specifically like the data layer for AI, that they'll start to input sort of common sense rules where the AI can start to reason for itself what is reasonable and unreasonable based off of what it's learning. Because if you think about it, that's just like another set of traits that you would build on top of it, would be like reasoning traits. It already can put things together and create logic, so it's pretty much already there to start looking at what is more or less logical. Do you agree that eventually that will be fixed and will have closer to a source of truth? Or do you think that it's always going to be somewhat tainted just because humans are imperfect and in charge of the data?
It's interesting. My opinion is that the data would never be ideal. That's my understanding. What you get out of the data is the interesting thing. We have to put some checks or rules around our data such that the data that is being used to train the model being utilized in such a way that the model is generating something that's not completely wrong, I would say. Also is very interesting because it's not just logical sometimes. It's some things that come into the areas which are not acceptable by a platform to output. There are some sensitivities and government laws around some things that cannot be written, or some things that need to be taken care of, or things like that. Um, so it's very important. It's definitely there. A lot of these checks are still, in my opinion, a bit manual still, which would need to be completely automated. So I think that's a gray area, but I definitely agree with you. With time, things would become more seamless, and the some of the issues that we are seeing right now would be more rule based, and some of the things that we are seeing right now that are being generated would be correct, like would be corrected, if I
I
can.
love that. So, and I can see the professional services world and just the services that we all use, even the consumer services world. I can see it bifurcating between those who are okay with a general and AI based service and those who are willing to spend more for what will be soon considered like a bespoke human service, where it's like 10 times more expensive to pay a person to do it than an AI. And you may get a 25 to 50% more high quality product than the AI, but at 10 times greater cost. You're going to see a big, and those are just random numbers, but I assume it will be outweighed like that, that you'll see the services split. Would you agree?
Yes, I completely agree with you, and this makes me draw parallels with the fashion industry, for example. Merchandise that's been created, like a piece of cloth that's been created by a machine, is much cheaper than a hand embroidered clothing, right? So if you think, like you started, or you said in the middle of this conversation, that technology, what was material before is materialistic before, is becoming more cerebral. That's completely right. Like we are working towards maybe materializing technology, or like how we are used to the world functioning with touchable touchable things, or hardware things are now getting into the software space, because something that is easy to generate or can be automated is definitely cheaper, because it requires less manpower, less number of hours, it's more automated. Whereas if you require more state of the art, very unique, because and something that has been touched by a human, or something that has more checks around it, or it's like a curated bespoke solution, you pay for the quality, you pay for that, right? So it's,
Hmm.
and it's there in every industry possible. I just gave example of one, like, but it's there everywhere, and that's what technology might go into. And it's definitely very interesting to me.
Right. Like, in what's interesting, where it starts to get complicated, not even that, not in a bad way, but sometimes the human services are actually lower quality than the machine services. So would the companies keep the costs flat to make a bunch of money if they know that humans can't do it better? For what I'm thinking is like airplanes, cars, buses. You would have an AI solution that is piloting those, but the humans would actually have possibly a lower a safety record than the machines, most likely. I mean, that's the only way it's going to happen, is
Yeah.
if they can make it safer. So so that's going to be interesting to see. Certain services actually get better and maybe get cheaper, but other services will probably get worse, and we'll have to tolerate that, but then they'll get cheaper.
Yeah, I think it again is very different for the kind of service. For example, self-driving cars, right? So it's it's very debatable what is right. Like you let a human drive a car. There are so many papers out there, so many research articles, and so much research done around, like whether it's 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 more safe for an automate, like for a self-driving car out there on the roads, or it's more safe for a human to drive a car, or you need some sort of human intervention. I feel like there's also this cab service in SF, I believe, that is the self-driving car, and they are doing their pilot around SF, and I think that's very successful. So it's very debatable. I think you're right, it depends on the service that we are, it's very, we would need to compartmentalize where human effort is is more valued than the AI solution, versus AI solution being the default. So I feel like definitely we would need to look into this more to better understand what is where to put humans higher, or where to put the technology higher, in terms of
Right.
the quality of service and the bucks we are paying for it.
What is the purpose of AI in your view?
For me, it is just to make my day to day easier. If in my personal life, if I'm planning a trip, before I used to like create my own itinerary or something like that, but today, to just get an idea, I just ask ChatGPT, like, send me a 4 day itinerary for XYZ, and it'll send me. It's on me how I want to take it. But I do have like a back end solution, like uh, for me ready, like a backup for me ready, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
In work, if there have been instances where you just need like a thought partner, and you're there because sometimes you're working from home as well, and like your teammates cannot be available to you all the time. If you need a thought partner, you can just give it a vague question, like not a vague question, like a question that a similar question to what you're thinking, or like just want a thought partner. You can ask it, and it would help you most times, or it would give you a perspective you were not thinking about. Or if you're writing like a paper, or if you're writing some gist, it can give you some things. But I would say, for me personally, it has not eliminated anything that I was doing before completely. It's just made things more easier, in a way that I can spend my time working on a blueprint already ready. Like, I can
Okay.
work on refining something. I don't have to start things from scratch again. I have something that I can build on top of. For me, it has been that. So I would say it's a game of efficiency, and it's been really helpful in that way. But I've seen people do all sorts of things with AI. So it's not just for me. It's that, but for people around, it's much more.
Yeah, I have used AI to replace a process that I did every time I hop on an intro call for this podcast. But with the guest before we record, I have an AI sit in on that call and take notes and then synthesize. So take those notes and then create questions based off of it and put in those questions to my OneNote. And also, it'll send me like the social media post and the title and subject and like, the description. So, all of the content that I need for that episode right off the bat. And then I also, one expansion is I wanted to send the questions to the guests so they can have an idea of what we're going to talk about. So, that's like the full loop of like all the prep work that I need to do. And it's just doing it automatically. And so, my goal is to like make my only point in the process this like the actual conversation, none of like the infrastructure work, the like the boring stuff that that you have to do. That's to me the best value of AI is taking away those things so I can focus on the value.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. And for that, you would have like wanted to hire somebody in previous times, or spent
Right.
like 5 to 6 hours, or like a couple of hours of prep work. So definitely, it's made you more efficient that way, for sure.
I want to talk to you about the second brain. So this is I didn't invent this concept. The second brain is just when you refer to any sort of technology that you rely on, related to like how you think and what you do. So like your notepad would be a form of a second brain, or like your notes app, or actual second brain. There's actual second brain like websites where it'll track what you browse, or at least make it really easy for you to pin what you browse to this sort of like network of information centered around different subjects. So you can then go back and be like, what was that article about that subject that I was reading? And so it organizes topics. What I'm wondering is, can you create a second brain for consumers at the individual level and try to model out what they are thinking and their intent to purchase and what their drivers are to purchase based off of the information and data they're exposed to, and actually build an AI that would essentially be trained on that small set of data to sort of anticipate what's going on in the mind of the consumer?
It's very interesting that you mentioned second brain, because you might already know the book by Tiago Ford, Building a Second Brain. I recently read that book,
Nice.
and
Wow.
it's one of the best books I've ever read. It
Wow.
exactly mentions this. Like, there is a couple of steps process to build a second brain, and it's like your second brain is technically your journal, right? Like, you you try to take notes of things that you want to capture or that are relevant to you, and it keeps on adding to that journal. And it's very interesting because, like you mentioned, you can choose your notes app or a capture tool. It can be anything, and just like write the project areas, resources, and things that you want to build around it, and how you draw inspiration of out of the things that are around you to lead you to do something. and just experiment with the ways that works better so as to make you feel more productive. So, and you kind of like review your weekly goals very efficiently with that. So it's very interesting that you mentioned the second brain concept, because it's a really good read.
Yeah. And then would you be, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, that you can envision a process by which you individually model each consumer if you have access to a wealth of data about what they are reading, watching, consuming, experiencing, saying, you can have an idea of what they're thinking.
Correct.
Because we're kind of like that's the nature versus nurture debate. Like you could feed in all of the nature stuff and then you can observe all of the nurture stuff. So the state of data collection in this day and age is like extremely broad reaching. Like you can get almost any kind of data. The only question is for whom. And because we use, because of statistics, we can actually extrapolate. If we understand audience sizes and we understand what are the similarities between those audiences, then we only have to measure very like intensely a small sample size. Nielsen did this very famously and created like this TV ratings by basically multiplying the small demographic into the nationwide population. So it would be very similar. um, what do you think about that sort of the idea of like for a small sample, you build second brains for all of them so you understand what these consumers are responding to, thinking, and that can actually connect to marketing messaging. So then you can have an AI create the creative for each specific person that addresses what their brain is thinking, worrying about, feeling, what are they going to respond to, what's their favorite color, their favorite everything, and just make an ideal ad for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of required with the current advancements. I think it's already being worked on or probably implemented in so many ways across the board by so many organizations. So it's very much important. Like targeted advertise, this is like a different level of targeted advertising, I would say, and that's what companies are looking to do. So definitely, I think this is either already happening or is soon going to happen. It's in my opinion, it would already be under works. Like, yeah.
Aren't those the best ideas when you're like, I'm sure somebody's working on that?
Yes, exactly. Because I feel like everyone has an end user or a customer or a consumer. Like each business is built and based on customers, and the end goal at the end of the day is acquisition or like retention or reducing attrition or things like that. So it's essential for them to build all their technology, tools, strategy, ideas around it. Their entire workforce revolves around it. So this would be, I think, one of the first things. Like for every company, I think for every company, customer or their users are the biggest asset or resource.
I could see this starting in the prospecting database world, like a Merkle would create something like this, where then you would be able to ask those like like second brains any question you want. And it's like having the consumer right in front of you, but like having all of them, and then they'll answer any question you want. Like you could say like, what's your number one reason for not buying this product? And like instead of having to do a focus group, they just tell you, like, here is what these customers don't like, or what's the way to break through to these customers. Well, this is what works, and maybe you can like connect the dots and see what they are responding positively to, what appeals to them, and then it can recommend that for you.
What you are saying is a level playground. If I have this at my company, you have this at your company. So now the groundwork is already laid, right? I think the next big thing would be how you build strategies having everything you ever wanted You have all the good data, you have everything that your customer needs, all the knowledge. How you're going to strategize to be better than me, for example. Like, what extra can you provide? Because previously you did not have that. You strive for it, but now everyone has the same information. What I know, my competitors exactly know the same. Now that we have all the data, now it would very much come on the quality of the product that people
Mm.
are producing, the quality of the software that exists. It's going to be
Marketing is gonna optimize itself into extinction.
correct. It's
So
going,
fascinating.
yeah, it's going to be a very different level field for every company out there, or like every person out there, every small business owner or big company. It's going to be super interesting. Yeah.
Wow. So because basically what would happen is like businesses would figure out so where we're going, and if I'm let me know if I'm understanding this correctly, or if you agree. Where we're going is we will eventually know the correct product or service for every individual person. The concept of marketing is the game between selecting a product and fulfilling a need, and that game is dependent on the fact that the consumer does not know the correct product for them.
Correct.
If the consumer does with certainty, there is no more marketing, because it's just telling the consumer this is the one. And I think we may be going there, where the AI will, maybe the consumer will have it, that will say, this is the product you need. And we're the ones creating that algorithm to tell the consumer that that's the product they need. But still, like from the consumer's perspective, there's no decision making. They're just like, I need a coffee maker. Well, here you go. This is the one you need. Like, this is the best one for you. We know everything about you. We've made the decision for you. This is it. Right? Then there's no more marketing. Do you agree that that's kind of the direction that we're going?
Yes. However, I do feel that if the consumer is human, they would never be 100% satisfied by one thing. They, as humans, we have a tendency to uh, compare and contrast, even if we have all the answers right in front of us. And also, this would also become a huge, um, there would be a dependency on logistics, supply chain, on the availability, etc. For example, there are so many algorithms which would predict that I'm better suited, for example, for a Galaxy, Samsung Galaxy, right? Uh, I own an iPhone, for example, right? Uh, I feel like the human psyche does not 100% rely on algorithms or solutions that are given to us. We live in a society that is also influenced by what my friends are using, what how am I doing compared to my peers, or like what others are using. Because, for example, if I have an iPhone, it's easier for me to share photos by iCloud and share data via iCloud, do FaceTime calling and things like that. It's very interesting in the fact that my decisions are not just based on my uh, characteristics alone. They are influenced by people around me as well, on what they are doing, what they are using. For example, if my friends are going to a Jay-Z concert and I decide to go to a Rihanna concert, like I'd be probably the only one alone. I would
Right.
I'd choose to go with my friends. If I want to go in a group, I can be a big Rihanna fan and go to the concert. But like, it's a higher probability, or quite more likely, that I would go to with my friends, right?
Mm.
So I feel like there are these things that would come in, that would influence a customer's decision making. So we would never be able to predict very confidently or with a very high probability what a customer should have. It would be still very facts driven or very algorithmically driven, but I don't think we can still say that with very much accuracy what is going to happen. Does that make sense?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that the solution is somewhere in the middle, where we make a lot of decisions right now that we don't have to make, and those will be fixed. Like I was thinking the other day, like, why do I have to go to like 10 different stores to get the things that I need? Why isn't there like a thing that just gives, like, just selects the best thing that's like the closest to me across all of the stores? There's no like super aggregation for purchases, um, which is really annoying. Like as a consumer, there's all these little like traps and loopholes and hoops to jump through. So I think that, and you have to like reason through all of that. And they have like little like reward cards, and they have rebates, and they have it's this and that. I don't like any of it, right? It's all made to trick us into not getting all of our money. And having something that can take care of that stuff, uh, the sort of day-to-day decision making would be great. But to the other point, there's chaos, and that's like the beauty in life. And if you, and there's a lot of people who do already live like an AI is making the decision for them. So I'm sure that will continue, and they will love for the computers to make more decisions. But I think you're not like that. I'm certainly not like that. Where you need to have a certain amount of freedom to innovate. You know, it's jazz, it's improv. So you need to be free to act within a certain boundary, and people will always have that, and thus there will always be marketing. But I think we'll harken back to the older days of marketing, like this sort of mass propaganda, not propaganda, but this sort of mass reaching campaigns where you're targeting everybody for these like little products. You know, I think a lot of the volume of advertising is going to go away. A lot of the signal to noise ratio in advertising is among the worst that we experience. You're while driving down the freeway and you see ads for every single thing that you don't need, right? So that's all noise. You get all your mail. You don't need anything. You throw it all away. That's all noise. You're digital, all noise, right? You make a purchase and you see the ads. That's all noise. And then like you get one thing in the mail that's like a gift card or something, or like a Banana Republic sale that's like an extra 40% off. And that one thing, you're like, now that I will use. And so so the future is just going to be more of those, like more actual influential touch points with marketing, and a lot less of the broad sweeping advertising that you just ignore.
Yeah, I agree. It's more back to basics and selling to intelligent, well informed consumers, customers. You can no longer serve the fluff anymore, because I feel like consumers are very intelligent. They know what they are getting into. They want to spend, even if they have like $5, they want to spend at the best thing that they think, and they are ready to wait for it. They are waiting for the quality. Um, so definitely it's very important, and timing is also essential. If I get that 40% Banana Republic, if I see that at a time when I don't want to buy clothing, or I just shopped at uh, Abercrombie, for example, that would mean nothing to me. But if I am actually going in the mood to shop tomorrow, or if it's before a shopping season or something like that, or a sale coming up or something like that, that's when it's going to hit the spot the best. So I think it's like selling it to the right people at the right time, messaging correctly, and also making sure that you're not overdoing it
Mhm.
to drive them away, not to drive them away. So it's very interesting, it's challenging, but it's with so much information, and things being so convenient for technology, made so convenient for technology, I think this is a new challenge that has cropped up. But I feel like this is just one of those things. Companies would definitely find a way around this as well, and like it's a constant challenge. So that's completely, yeah. Everyone must be up for it already.
I want to thank you, Ayushi, for coming on and sharing your insights about AI and data in the future in business. So thank you, and can't wait to have you on again.
Thanks, Alex. It was great being here again, and yeah, all the best. I look forward to talking to you in future as well. Have a good one.
Thank you, Ayushi. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.